Welcome to Inside Games Daily, the only gaming news show brave enough to run another report on a topic that does not perform very well on YouTube.
That's right. It is news. It is news, but we also, we pay our bills based on those views. So it's an interesting situation to be caught in between, but none of that matters when you got principles on your side, right, Bruce?
That's right. A frustrating response from credit card company Visa has prompted frustrated gamers to start organizing in opposition to recent bouts of censorship on Steam and indie hosting platform itch.io. Lawrence, they listened to me when I said they should organize.
Yeah, and they're kind of doing it, sort of, kind of. Here's a quick recap of how we got here, though, just in case you haven't been following the news. Steam removed about 20-ish, by our informal count, 20-ish adult games, and itch.io de-indexed all of their adult material last week after pressure from payment processors. That's an important phrase. It'll be more important later. The payment processors were in turn pressured by Australian nonprofit group Collective Shout, who seeks to remove all games featuring rape or incest from either platform, as they would, in their eyes, violate Australian classification law.
The apparent power of payment processors, such as Visa and MasterCard, but they're really not involved with the story. Regardless, to immediately yank questionable material from Steam and itch came as a surprise for a lot of consumers.
Yeah, the exact nature of what a payment processor is starts to become part of this story in a minute. A lot of those upset, frustrated, and cultured gamers, we'll say, chose to fight back on this censorship by writing to credit card companies, voicing their opposition to financial institutions that are effectively censoring online media.
One user, Dude Duck, received a reply from Visa and posted it to the Steam subreddit over the weekend. The response reads like a big bucket of lies, saying, quote, "We do not make moral judgments on legal purchases made by consumers." They also claim to have, quote, "no visibility into the specific goods or services sold when we process a transaction."
Great. Wasn't me, is essentially what they're saying. Yeah. Even though, they've been named, especially Collective Shout has explicitly named them in their lobbying. In response, Dude Duck shared a link to a contact form and a polite but firm template letter to encourage others to voice their frustrations with the situation.
Nicely done. While we encourage collective action, that's what's caused the censorship here in the first place from that lobbyist group Collective Shout, there's just one complication. Lawrence, can you explain it?
Yeah, I can, because only on somebody else on Reddit did. But yeah, it turns out Visa isn't a payment processor in the first place, which might explain the seeming lies in their response. Essentially, they push all of the vetting onto the processing companies so they don't shoulder any of the legal risk.
Okay. In the same Reddit thread that Lawrence is reading, user Red739423 posted a lengthy comment spelling out the difference between payment processors and credit card networks like Visa and MasterCard.
And while we don't know who Red is, they certainly talk like somebody who has worked in the financial industry, and they commiserate with the complications of this whole situation. But we're going to dive in and try to put pressure in the right spots. We got to know this stuff. So according to Red, quote, "payment processors are middleman companies that take your card and transfer the money from one account to another and handle all the small details in between."
Of course. The middleman.
Right, yeah.
There's always one. As Red explains, payment processors are the ones that shoulder most of the legal responsibility when it comes to vetting a transaction. Payment processors that operate in high-risk industries charge higher payment processing rates to offset the risk of being sued.
Yeah, Red then concluded by explaining that, quote, "Steam has two choices, and that is to remove the content to satisfy the payment processor or go with a high-risk processor. Steam chose to take the games down rather than pay 5 to 20 times their current credit card fees."
Makes sense. It does. Neither Steam nor itch.io named the payment processing companies that applied the pressure leading to their action. So that's kind of a problem, because we all were mad at Visa and MasterCard for this, and like PayPal, and we were all like, how dare they? And then you go one more level deep, and all of a sudden it's these middleman companies that we don't have names of. Like, does anybody know?
There's a list of payment processing companies on Wikipedia, but we don't know the ones that Steam or itch are choosing to use, and those companies probably didn't name them for fear of actual reprisal on those companies. Because if you have a good working relationship with the company, the last thing you probably want to do is invite a bunch of negative attention towards them. So it's interesting. The plot thickens a little bit. There's an entire layer of the financial industry that's basically set up to be the blast shield or fall guy against any legal repercussions of processing payments. So Visa and MasterCard do get to sit there technically and say, hey, that's not our problem. Technically, they're right, but the system is designed that way on purpose. Maybe I'm not suggesting that applying pressure to Visa is pointless or misdirected. I mean, if Visa hears enough about it, they'll probably talk to their industry partners and be like, what the hell is going on? So elevation is probably not a bad thing, provided it's done, firmly but respectfully. We don't need death threats or harassment or anything like that. But yeah, I was voicing my frustration about this before, that like a principle is so easy to agree with, but the second you try to convert it into change in policy in the real world, you're suddenly confronted with the entire history of human decisions that got us to where we are. And that makes it so much more complicated, because there are processes and industries in motion that have been tuned to navigate all these issues all the time. So it's not meant to discourage anyone from doing anything. It's just, even I, as like somebody who's reading up on this topic and just chiseling down a little bit, I'm like, this just gets so broad so quickly.
You know what's interesting too is I was just reading up on Collective Shout, and I was trying to figure out where they applied pressure, because I think a lot of people assumed Collective Shout had gone straight to Visa and MasterCard about this, and then in their actual Collective Shout response, they said, we raised our objection to rape and incest games on Steam for months, and they ignored us for months. We approached payment processors because Steam did not respond to us. So they didn't actually say very specifically in this statement that they applied pressure to Visa and MasterCard. I don't know if they went directly to the payment processors or if they went to Visa and MasterCard.
They kind of did it all. In their open letter, they did name executives at Visa and MasterCard in addition to a couple of payment processors as well. I think so. PayPal is a payment processor. And they named PayPal in that, I think, and then a couple of other ones. But yeah, they cast a very wide net and got their desired result. So there's nothing saying that people who don't support the removal of those games could do the same, but it just requires research, organization, tenacity. People have to care about this a month from now or 3 months from now. So yeah, I invite the civil action on both sides to figure out where people land on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's already happening. And like we talked about last week when we were reporting on this story when it was developing, we were saying, get organized and start talking to your lawmakers, your representatives, your senators. Go directly to Visa and MasterCard or these payment processing companies. Unfortunately, we don't have any names. Wish we had a name of a company that we could go to and just be like, go there. But if you have any objection to this at all about Steam taking down these games and itch delisting games like mouthwashing, I don't know if you saw that. They recently were like, itch had to like delist almost every single adult game, and mouthwashing was one. And mouthwashing is a super provocative, interesting game that has something to say, and it does have adult themes. So it's now we're getting into the spot where all of a sudden games that are legitimate and not are only about rape actually are getting delisted and are getting deplatformed because of Collective Shout and their actions and the payment processors. So get to it. Start signing petitions and writing letters and doing all that.
Yeah, it's a shame the position that itch has been put into. It's pretty clear, because mouthwashing is still up on Steam, it's pretty clear that Steam has done a much more comprehensive job auditing all the content that's on its own store, which is not a trivial task, by the way. Itch is nowhere near Steam's level as a company in terms of the headcount or resources. So it's understandable that they would not be able to personally vet everything that every indie developer uploads. But now they're in the position of being on the hook for it. You know what? It's weird. It reminds me of when Warner acquired Machinima. No one at Machinima could vouch for the copyright liability of any of the content on the network because they didn't check and they didn't keep paperwork on any of it. So Warner ostensibly inherited all this content that people love to watch, but it was more of a legal risk than it was a financial incentive to keep it up on the internet, because now you've opened the door to a lot of lawsuits to your company just by having it there. So I can see why Itch is in that position, especially if, their payment processors under threat of being sued by people in Australia en masse have to now take action that appeases the one lifeline they have to do business. Yeah, it sucks. It sucks that the reaction is so disproportionate, I guess. That every remotely adult game like mouthwashing is caught up in this, at least on itch. And I wish that they had an opportunity to conduct business some other way. One thing I did think of is that Steam could set up their own payment provider. Some megacorps like Apple, Amazon, and Tencent have their own. I don't know that Steam's not, it's a big company, but it's not Tencent. It's not Apple. So that may be a little beyond the scope of their business just for the sake of operating Steam, but maybe not. Maybe not. Especially for them, all they had to do was delist 20 games and say nothing. And the issue I don't want to be cynical, but at least for Steam, the issue seems to largely blow over. So I imagine also what I've detected from Steam is they don't want to be involved at that layer of the business. They try to excise themselves from as many active management decisions of their own platform that they can, to their own credit, actually. I think their libertarian approach has been paying off, especially now that even the listing of games has become a politicized thing.
What you're describing is them trying to figure out the largest margin for the least amount of labor.
100%. Yep.
Every company, Itch included, is trying to do this. And it's like, I know that, and I'm not, by the way, this isn't me blaming Itch at all. Itch is, they're probably like a staff of 100 people, maybe less. And they're doing their best to sort of, put as many games out as they can and platform a bunch of really fun and interesting games. And occasionally the adult games will get thrown in there. And they, along the way, when they're putting these games on Itch, they know that they are accepting there's a liability there, but no one has done anything, right? They haven't been sued. So they're just sort of like, we'll just keep doing it and doing it and doing it until there's a risk, until something pops up. And this is the risk. This happened. My best example of this, like your machinima example, is YouTube. YouTube had to do this for YouTube Kids years ago. YouTube did not curate any of their children's content, which is insane, by the way, because they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but they were not curating children's videos. And so then people would go to YouTube Kids and then would just recommend the worst shit in the kids section of YouTube. And then people started noticing and being like, wait a minute, what is this? And then there was collective action. YouTube was like, fine, all right, we'll curate, we'll make our own little section, make sure every video is safe. And everyone's like, what the fuck, really, YouTube? You couldn't do that before? Like, that's your job. So every company does this. They accept a bunch of liability along the way of building this business as fast as they can and make as much money as they can. And then, well, eventually they'll get sued. And then they're like, no big deal. The billions we made is worth the 10 million settlement. So fuck it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just to provide, because you mentioned potential headcount for Itch, it actually kind of ignited my curiosity. Don't have an exact number, but some websites put Itch at less than 25 employees.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's indie. Like, Itch has never been a big, like, money-making online storefront.
Yeah.
It is purely for the weirdest, like, most like student project style games, which I enjoy, by the way. It is fun to trawl Itch on a somewhat monthly basis and see the weird stuff that they post. If you've ever missed a Bubsy game, there's a lot of weird Bubsy knockoffs. Anyway, so yeah, that's what you can find there. But Steam, I think, is it's in the 300s, I think. That's the estimate now. So the comparisons are a bit unfair, especially since it seems like people have been dogpiling Itch harder because their response has, I guess, been a little disproportionate. And also, I think they're in the news more just because they've been posting more updates. But I just wanted to vouch for Itch. They're tiny, and it kind of sucks they've been put in this situation.
No, I completely agree with you. By the way, that like me saying that they're a small company is not a detractor of Itch. They've been doing the Lord's work for a very, very long time, and like I said, they just are accepting the liability along the way because that's what they have to do. They can't be like, okay, well, we're going to hire 50 lawyers because we put up one adult game on Itch. Like, they can't do that. So they just have to wait until this kind of stuff blows up and then deal with it as it comes, and it sucks. Either way, I would encourage you to go and figure out how to write these form letters to these payment processors and let them know that you don't like this censoring of the platforms that you use.
Yeah, I agree. I agree entirely. But again, courteous, firm, polite. But yeah, every voice counts. And speaking of, we'd like to thank you for using your voice or your finger to watch this video. Just realized that sounded a little weird, so I don't know what happened to that finger after you clicked on the play button, but I appreciate that you did that, and I make no judgments after that fact. I'd like to extend an especial thank you to folks that support us directly through Patreon. Today, we got a couple of special Patreons to shout out, Name Hogger and Matt Bogenberger. Thank you very much for enabling our unique blend of bravery and reporting. If you haven't checked out our Patreon, please do so. I post a special spicy meme of the day every day. Something from Lawrence's private stash. I've been like throwing random pics into my pictures folder for like 30 years now. So there's some deep cuts in there. So swing on by. It's worth a view.